Thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. From time to time, we're fortunate on Across the Fence to be able to share with you some of the respected national and international speakers who visit Vermont. We have such a guest with us today. She's a native of Germany, a highly sought-after scientist and speaker, and an expert in horticulture and environmental restoration. We begin with a video introduction of Claudia West, who touches on the power of nature and the need for native plants.
Wherever I go, I always look for green. I can't help it. It's like a magnet. Doesn't matter if I go into a city or in somebody's garden, green has a very strong power on me. About 300 years ago, this was a forest. And within 30 years from now, 75% of all people will live in cities like this one. You can't ignore millions of years of evolution in nature. A few hundred years of living in cities doesn't make that go away. Even subconsciously, we still feel as we are part of nature. Do you think we are part of nature? I do. I think it's home. We tremendously enjoy being close to it, if we are aware of it or not. I think we all feel it deeply inside. And we have to take good care of it. And we can. We now know how to create nature. We can do this. Science backs it up and shows us how. That brings a new responsibility. And cities need us to bring nature back into our lives. Natural places allow us to explore them. It creates a place where we can move around and follow our deep instincts of curiosity, joy of discovering new things. Did you know that all plants have different functions? Plants sequester more CO2 than we thought. In the challenge of global warming, more plants will be very helpful. We can use some to purify water, others to attract butterflies, hummingbirds, and bees. So we can improve habitat and increase biodiversity. And yet other plants are perfect to fight diseases. And we as people use them for food and medicine. I enjoy when I see plants growing in highly polluted industrial sites where nothing else will grow. And they help clean up soil, clean up our own messes that we have left behind for hundreds of years. I think that's just beautiful to watch, that nature can heal and bring things back. It is all about the balance and putting the right plants together. I see what I can do, but can you imagine the beauty of all these possibilities?
Well, our thanks to Agri-Food Support of the Netherlands for allowing us to share that video introduction. And with that, I want to welcome Vermont's own horticulture expert, Leonard Perry, as well as our special guest, Claudia West. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Leonard, how did you and Claudia meet?
Well, I first got to know Claudia when she came to speak to the professionals in Vermont, the Greenworks, which is a nursery and landscape industry. And I thought, wow, she has a great message for home gardeners. So she was able to come back, and then as long as she was in Vermont, I figured why not come here today. So with her background from, you heard I mentioned earlier, from Germany in horticulture and landscape architecture, working with some of the top nurserymen and nurseries, not only abroad, but in recent years in this country, she's speaking all over the country and writing a book, which we'll talk about at the end. She's got a great message and a lot to share.
Well, welcome, Claudia.
It's great to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit more about why we should be thinking more about native plants?
Yeah, native plants are the foundation of life. They are producing the oxygen that we breathe in on a daily basis. They feed the insects that we enjoy so much in our gardens. And native plants, quite honestly, help us clean rainwater, help us cool down the air and create much better environmental conditions for us people to live in. However, in today's world, many of these native plants have disappeared because we have managed to build our parking lots and housing developments right on top of where these great and important plants used to grow. And this is why it is so important for us now to bring these plants back for our own well-being and for a better planet for the future. The question, however, is how to do that. And I'm here today to share a really exciting approach to planting with you today that helps not only build the landscapes of the future that can sustain us on this planet, but also looks stunningly beautiful and is really the foundation for a better life.
And so you brought along some pictures to help illustrate the benefits of using native plants and how to combine them. So let's take a look.
Yeah, so this image shows exactly what we're talking about earlier.
That's beautiful.
Using plants in really dense combination, lush gardens. Here you can see onions and purple coneflower mingling very closely with one another in a stunningly colorful combination.
I just love, I mean, these are native plants, but look how beautiful. It looks like a planted garden.
Exactly.
You know, and it's great for the pollinators too, especially those single coneflowers, which is really key, not some of the newer varieties.
Absolutely, and this image here shows a beautiful, lush, dense garden at Mount Cuba Center in Delaware. And here you can see how plants cover soil incredibly densely. You don't see any mulch whatsoever. Instead, many gorgeous, beautiful plants cover that soil and provide incredible habitat. And that's exactly how plants grow in nature as well. Here you can see Pennsylvania sedge, beautiful, thick carpet holding soil together and providing incredible wildlife habitat. The next image shows how plants can be layered together in stable and successful combination. Note how these grasses are growing right underneath of taller perennials, covering their feet and using the morphology of these taller plants to kind of tuck right underneath of them. This is a garden at North Creek Nurseries where I work. We have a lot of, we call sponge gardens or rain gardens at the nursery where we use plants to actively soak up the rain. Here you can see this wonderful pink obedient plant. Note the little bee on it. Blue star as well as great rudbeckias and other plants soaking up the rain and providing incredible beauty. So I think the times where it was enough for plants to just look pretty, they're quite frankly over. We need plants that soak up the rain, and we need to plant salad bars for insects that bring nature right back into our cities for us to enjoy and to help nature. And these plantings can look incredibly neat and beautiful. This shows another example of a rain garden with a very simple and legible plant palette. All the water from a big parking lot drains right into this, and the plants help us clean that water and put it right back in the ground where it belongs. Beautiful native plants like this monarch flower are really the building blocks of an incredibly important and sustainable ecosystem.
And I love the way that, you know, this is, you see all the bees on there. It's interesting because I had a grad student who looked at some of these. We've talked about this in a previous show. This species versus a cultivar of that, really there was no difference in that. Some plants there were, but this is called monarch flower, butterfly weed, butterfly flower. But it's mainly the bees that are the pollinators, which I thought was fascinating on that.
And they need these plants to survive. These ecological landscapes fit in all garden spaces, and that's the exciting thing. You don't have to have a huge yard to make this happen. This shows a picture of my co-author Thomas Rayner's garden. You can see how much you can do even in a small urban or suburban garden space by planting plants densely and letting them be the mulch, planting one plant on top of the other.
I love the fact that we're not using mulch. I think that's the worst job in the garden.
Exactly, yeah. And these gardens, as I said earlier, can be incredibly beautiful. These designed plant communities are not a garden style. They can work in both formal settings, like what you see here in this image, as well as more naturalistic settings, depending on how wild or neat you like your garden to be.
They have a formal edge around that, but wild planting within that.
Exactly.
But it looks kind of like it's supposed to be there.
Yeah, it's perfectly acceptable, even in super neat and tidy gardens.
And now, Claudia, talk a little bit about why less mulch and more plants is so important.
Yeah, so quite frankly, plants are the best mulch on earth. The next image will show a typical mulch garden, and you know, like many gardeners can see that Mulch alone will not get rid of your weeds.
Right,
In order
still
to
have to weed.
Yeah, keep it clean, you need to remulch on a regular basis, and that costs money, it's labor intensive. Or some folks even have to spray the mulch with pre-emergence or even worse, Roundup, which is highly controversial to keep it clean.
That's what I found with mulch too. Either it has to be too thick so the perennials don't come up, but then the annuals will seed on top. Or if it's too thin, you get both the annuals on top and the perennials coming up. So, and then I weed it, but then the mulch gets worked in, so I don't have mulch. So I have problems with that. So I've quit using
Absolutely,
it.
yes, yeah. The better alternative would be using plants like mulch. We call this green mulch or living mulch. And here you can see this gorgeous planting at Phipps Conservatory in Pittsburgh, where plants are used to fill that space. And all these additional grasses and forbs provide so much more wildlife value. Think about what you can do by tucking in beautiful ground covers, like here we see green and gold with the yellow flowers right underneath of your taller perennials for fascinating wildlife habitat. James Gordon's garden, here this is an image of Federal Twist. I think it's one of the most inspiring gardens that are densely planted and provide that ecological and functional value that our gardens must have in the future.
It looks so wild, but it's all planned and planted.
Yeah, and it's not a wild mess. It's obviously designed, like this example here, designed by Ume van Sweden, a Washington, D.C. based firm. This is at the New York Botanical Garden. You can see the dense ground cover, but at the same time it's a garden. It's beautiful.
And that's like early summer blooms from those foam flowers is one of my favorite plants to use as a ground
They're
cover.
absolutely gorgeous. I agree. Yes. Yeah, this shows what it looks like if a plant community like this is planted on a larger scale. This is Wolf Trap National Park for the Performing Arts, and this is the planting about 2 years later without any mulch at all. You could never mulch on a huge scale like this. So it's not only a wonderful way of bringing nature back, but it's also a great way of engaging young folks. Like here you can see the students at Roland Park Country School in Baltimore planting an urban meadow on extremely difficult soil. The mulch, notice, is only on the pathways. Plants are designed to cover the rest of the ground. And then this, about a year later, you can see monarch flower covering soil. On terrible soils, these plants are selected for really difficult site conditions and don't need irrigation or any watering, any soil amendments whatsoever. In fact, these plants only work on really difficult sites, really poor soils. So you can use your site's constraints as assets.
I love the name of this one, the Mexican hat plant, red midget variety. I mean, it's just, but it's great to know these plants that actually too much care is too bad. So
That's right.
the less is better for them.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Another image here shows, again, one of our living laboratories at North Creek Nurseries, where we planned many experimental plant communities to learn more about how to combine these species with one another. And we planned most of them with the most sustainable way of planting, using smaller container sizes. Here you can see what we call a landscape plug. It's really the smallest container size you need to transition a plant from a nursery to a landscape. This is a peek behind the scenes in one of our greenhouses, where we're constantly trying to improve the quality of landscape plugs and reduce our carbon footprint. So note the new greenhouse facility in the back. We have a very passionate team that is really working very hard in making more ecological plants available for gardeners.
That's terrific. Now, you have a great concept and design ideas, and you have a book if people want to learn more. It's called Planting in a Post-Wild World.
Yeah, so Thomas Rayner, my brilliant co-author, and I published this book about 1.5 years ago. And this book is a manual that shows you how to build such gardens for the future. In it, you will find all kinds of instructions, illustrations that show you how the pieces go together, so you have guidance and inspiration to find exactly the right solution for your own yard, or if you are a landscape professional, maybe for a different kind of commercial or institutional landscape.
Now, this concept you have here, we're looking at with the ground cover layer, that's the mulch, the green plants covering the ground, and the seasonal theme plants, which is the most, and then the structural that rise out of that, which is, I guess, not too much. You don't want more than maybe 10% of the plants, but to give some of that structure. So I look, yeah, that's a great.
Yeah,
you
so we're
cover all
trying
this.
to make it as visual as possible so that, you know, it's inspiring and achievable for folks who either have an existing garden and want to do better, or people who are starting with a blank slate and want to give it a shot.
So, Leonard, you also have more information on your website?
I do, on some of the topics we've touched on, the native plants, the pollinators, that's the Perry's Perennials.info, my Perry's Perennial pages. So under the articles, there's lots more there.
Well, it's great, very inspirational. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.